Ethan Caldwell stood beneath the fluorescent lights of Harlington's premier laboratory, gripping the edges of a gleaming metal table. Around him, the hum of equipment formed a steady drone, a kind of industrial lullaby that echoed in the high-ceilinged chamber. He had worked here for years, refining each mechanical linkage, polishing every prototype limb until it mirrored his own relentless self-discipline. Already tall for a human at nearly 2 meters, he was dwarfed now by the sheer scale of his ambitions, which spanned not only the length of this laboratory, but stretched across star systems. His latest exoskeleton design gleamed with promise. It was a testament to his obsession, a merging of steel, carbon fiber, and a flexible substrate derived from algae-based plastics. A network of sensors ran through every segment, allowing it to adjust to the user's muscle impulses. The design was deceptively slender, more graceful than the bulky suits others had attempted in recent years. He peered at the readouts projected on the transparent panel overhead, nodding with the satisfaction of a craftsman who recognized each improvement he had made since dawn. Far away, in a different star system, the Soreni prepared for their new diplomatic mission to Earth. The impending arrival of their delegation was well known. News outlets had lauded it as a triumph of interplanetary cooperation. Yet, rumors circulated of the Soreni's physical distinctiveness, their elongated limbs, their nearly translucent skin that shimmered in direct sunlight, and their aristocratic manner. Among them was Zara, rumored to be one of the tallest Soreni yet known in living memory. On her home world, Soria, her atypical height had been whispered about as a curiosity, and, in hushed corners, viewed as an unfortunate trait. Zara's arrival upon Earth loomed, and Ethan had been informed that Harlington's labs would host the Soreni scientists to observe human engineering feats. More importantly, they would judge whether Earth's exoskeletal research merited further collaboration. It was the chance of a lifetime, a moment when Ethan's name might be whispered across more than one star system. His heart pounded at the thought. He stepped away from the table and approached a tall storage case. Within glistened multiple prototypes, each a stepping stone on his path toward perfection. There was the early Mark II exoskeleton, robust, heavy, all brute force with little elegance. Next to it stood the Mark III, more refined but prone to structural failures after repeated strain cycles. Now, the Mark IV model, svelte yet deceptively strong, was Ethan's pride. He had developed an advanced neural interface that read microsignals from a user's muscles, adjusting the exoskeleton's movements in real time. He turned a slender gear between his fingers, letting the shining metal reflect the overhead lights, and gently inserted it into the final assembly. Each movement was accompanied by the hiss of air, the whir of servo motors. At last, with the final piece locked in place, Ethan sighed. Tomorrow, the Soreni would come, Zara among them. He only knew her name in passing, heard it 100 times from the lips of corporate executives, and read it in bulletins forwarded from the International Diplomatic Office. Zara, the Soreni ambassador, rumored to be of regal bearing and in search of Earth technologies that might benefit her world. A clang at the doorway startled him. He turned to see Megan Langley, his colleague in biomechatronics. Her blonde hair tied back, she looked both weary and exhilarated, having spent the past 2 days calibrating sensors for an exoskeleton subproject. She gave a crooked smile, stepping forward to glance at the newly completed Mark IV. "So," she said in a quiet voice, "you really think the Soreni will be impressed by your latest upgrade?" Ethan chuckled under his breath. "I hope so, Meg. I poured everything I had into the design. This is it. It has to be." She touched the exoskeleton's smooth plating. "Well, it certainly looks impressive. But rumor has it the Soreni are especially concerned about living architecture, whatever that means. Apparently, they don't just build static structures on their planet. Their buildings, their fabrics, they all shift with the environment. Their designs grow and respond over time. They might see your mechanical approach as too." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Too rigid." He shrugged, absorbing that news. "If that's the case, I'm ready to adapt. Mechanics can be fluid in their own way. Besides, the Mark IV is designed to be flexible, to shift with the user's movements. It's not exactly living, but it's the closest we can get with current Earth technology." "Still," Megan said, "be prepared for the unexpected. Everything I've heard about the Soreni suggests they're different. She gave him an encouraging pat on the shoulder and walked away, footsteps echoing down the hallway. Ethan remained in the lab, his mind churning with anticipation. Somewhere beyond Earth's atmosphere, Zara was on her way, tall, mysterious, her presence heralded by the entire planet's media. Unknown to Ethan, that same night, aboard a sleek, silver spacecraft with flowing lines reminiscent of coral reefs, Zara stared out from a crystalline viewport. Her reflection looked back at her with large, silver-gray eyes, cheekbones high, and a slender face framed by hair the color of moonlit steel. Yet most noticeable was her imposing stature, nearly 2.5 meters or more, when she stood in all her length. On Soria, this had been a near curse. The Soreni cherished proportion, and her height was considered an unwanted deviation. Gossip had dogged her since her adolescence. She is too tall to breed. She will never find a partner among us. Her parents had attempted to hush these whispers, but the stigma clung to her like dew. Now, as she arrived at Earth, she wondered if perhaps she might find acceptance on a planet teeming with individuals who already varied so widely. Not that she was here for personal acceptance. No, her diplomatic mission was paramount. Officially, she was to evaluate Earth's technological innovations and see if any synergy might exist with her people's living architecture. Quietly, the Soreni leadership hoped that Earth's brash, inventive spirit could coax new solutions to problems that had long vexed Soria's carefully nurtured environment. But in the solitude of her private chamber aboard the spacecraft, Zara worried. If she were too tall for her own kind, would she appear monstrous to these humans? Old insecurities gnawed at her, yet she forced them away, adopting the serene facade she had cultivated through years of diplomatic training. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the tinted windows of Harlington's lab complex, the day so bright it lent a nearly ethereal sheen to everything. Ethan had barely managed 4 hours of sleep, but his excitement spurred him forward. He walked briskly to the main atrium, where a delegation of executives from Earth and the newly arrived Soreni visitors had gathered. As he entered, the sight drew him short. The Soreni stood in a half-circle, clad in attire that seemed part fabric, part living organism, shimmering with subtle color shifts. Their expressions were composed yet watchful. At their center was Zara, her presence impossible to ignore, not only because of her remarkable height, but the quiet dignity she carried herself with. She wore a long, pearlescent mantle that draped her slender frame, revealing in certain lights the mosaic of living threads that formed a shifting tapestry of pastel hues. One of the Earth executives stepped forward, clearing his throat, and made the introductions. Ambassador Zara, may I present Ethan Caldwell, our lead engineer on the exoskeleton project. He is the mind behind some of the most advanced prototypes on Earth. Zara inclined her head, her voice low and resonant. A pleasure to meet you, Engineer Caldwell. I look forward to witnessing your work. Her accent had a subtle lilt, words pronounced precisely, as though shaped with care. Ethan forced himself not to stare too long, yet in the seconds he took to meet her eyes, he felt the faintest jolt, an awareness of this alien being who, in that moment, seemed no stranger than he was to himself. She was tall, yes, but not monstrous. There was a graceful line to her posture, an otherworldly majesty. He bowed, trying not to let his own nerves betray him. Ambassador, it's an honor. If you and your delegation have time, I'd be delighted to show you the laboratory. The group began a tour. Ethan described each facility in moderate detail, pointing out advanced 3D metal printers, scanning equipment, and hypersterile rooms where engineers in white suits assembled microchips. The Soreni nodded, asked polite questions, and occasionally exchanged quiet remarks in their own musical tongue. Finally, they approached the culminating point of the tour, the exoskeleton workshop. Its high bay doors slid open to reveal an expansive space. On a raised platform rested the Mark IV, illuminated by carefully placed lights. Various mechanical arms and scaffolds stood around, echoing the complexities of a half-assembled dream. Ethan guided them to a vantage point. This, he said, voice echoing softly through the workshop, is the Mark IV exoskeleton. It's designed to amplify a wearer's strength, adapt to micromovements in real time, and minimize user fatigue. Our ultimate goal is seamless integration between biological impulses and mechanical assistance. He approached the platform, stepping up with an unspoken pride. He unlocked the neural interface, his fingers deftly running across the polished metal. With your permission, Ambassador, I'd like to demonstrate. Zara exchanged a glance with one of her aides, who gave a subtle nod. She stepped forward, looking down at the exoskeleton. It's smaller than I expected, she observed quietly. Perhaps because many of my people stand taller than most humans. Ethan smiled in a somewhat apologetic way, suddenly keenly aware of the size difference. We're prepared to adjust the dimensions if you'd like to try it. The Mark IV can be customized quickly. We've built in an extensible framework. She studied the lines of the device, her large eyes lingering on certain details. Does it truly respond to the wearer's thoughts, or only to muscle activation? Ethan hesitated, hoping not to delve into too much jargon. It reads electrical signals from muscle groups, he explained, tapping a thin, flexible sensor embedded in the structure. So it's not mind-reading, exactly, but it reacts to the neural impulses that control bodily movement. It's nearly instantaneous, more fluid than you'd expect from a mere mechanical contraption. Zara laid a hand on one of the exoskeleton's arm braces. Even though she touched it delicately, the frame shifted slightly, motors humming. He expected her to recoil in surprise, but instead she regarded it with calm curiosity, as though she were glimpsing a new life form. Her expression was thoughtful. Intriguing, she said softly. Our architecture on Soria can shift, but it moves in response to environmental stimuli. Shifting light, temperature variations, sometimes even the occupant's voice. Yet nothing we build is separate from a living core. Here, your exoskeleton stands apart, a creation of metal and synthetic materials, and still it moves. He considered her words. We do lack living cores, but Earth's designs have a life of their own, in a metaphorical sense. We put our dreams into metal, and in that sense, they breathe with our ambition. She gazed at him for a moment, and he sensed that something about his statement spoke to her. Then she stepped back, yielding the stage. Show us, then. A hush fell as Ethan donned a black bodysuit that acted as an interface layer, stepping carefully into the exoskeleton. It clasped around his torso, arms, and legs with a series of methodical clicks. He ran through a short calibration procedure, feeling the small vibrations as it confirmed sensor contact. Then, with a resolute inhalation, he walked a few steps. The exoskeleton glided with him, each stride amplified so that his footfalls landed without the usual heaviness. He pivoted, bending at the knees, jumping lightly, each motion performed seamlessly. Zara's expression remained poised, but there was no denying her interest. The other Soreni, too, regarded the demonstration with bright, inquisitive eyes. A hush enveloped them as Ethan demonstrated lifting a large metal bar that a normal human might strain to raise. With the exoskeleton, he lifted it effortlessly, pivoting in place and lowering it without a clank. Applause rose from the small audience, human and Soreni alike. When the demonstration ended, Ethan peeled away the exoskeleton. Zara inclined her head, acknowledging the achievement. Your creation impresses me, Ethan Caldwell. I sense a kinship in how you spoke of breathing life into ambition. It reminds me, in a small way, of how we Soreni treat our living structures. Perhaps there is more in common between our worlds than we assumed. He bowed once more. I would be honored to learn more of your people's approach to technology. Perhaps we can merge ideas in ways that benefit both worlds. Zara gave a slight, graceful nod. That is precisely the reason for this mission, engineer. I shall speak more with you. But for now, I must attend to certain protocols with your superiors. She turned to go, towering above her aides, who escorted her away. Ethan watched, heart still pounding. The day had arrived, and it seemed that he had made a promising impression. Yet as the Soreni delegation vanished down a corridor, one of the corporate sponsors, a stern-faced man named Irving Olmsted, sidled up to Ethan. Well done, Caldwell, Olmsted muttered, pushing wire-rimmed glasses up the bridge of his nose. Just remember, the Soreni want to see if we have anything to offer them. We're not here to play host for a starry-eyed engineer. The board is eager to finalize a technology-sharing agreement. Don't get lost in your personal dreams. Ethan bristled inwardly but forced a polite smile. Of course, Everything I do is with the company's and Earth's best interests in mind. Olmsted narrowed his eyes. See that it remains so. He turned, leaving Ethan to the hush of the workshop. In the subsequent days, the Soreni delegation held multiple official meetings with human dignitaries, forging the broad outlines of cultural exchange, limited technology sharing, joint research on environmental engineering, and carefully choreographed visits between scientists. Ethan's exoskeleton drew large crowds in the demonstrations that followed. Yet amidst the bustle and ceremony, he found himself repeatedly glancing toward Zara. She was often polite, always poised, but rarely had the chance for more than a perfunctory conversation. Then, one afternoon, she appeared at his workshop unannounced. He was tinkering with an improved sensor array, analyzing data streams on a curved monitor, when a shadow fell across the threshold. Turning, he saw Zara, radiant in the midday sun that filtered through the high windows. He scrambled to set aside his tools, offering her a polite bow. "Ambassador, I wasn't expecting you." She moved inside with a slow, unhurried grace. The hush in the workshop pressed around them, dust motes dancing through angled light. "Forgive the intrusion, Engineer Caldwell," she began, "but I find myself curious about how your exoskeleton might pair with Soreni principles. My associates have always believed that living architecture is supreme, yet there may be a place for mechanical augmentation, especially for someone like me." Her final words barely masked something deeper, almost a vulnerability. He gestured for her to approach the Mark IV design. "I'd be honored to show you. Let's see how we can adapt it to your physiology." They spent the next few hours immersed in adjustments. While Earth's standard exoskeleton was made for average-sized humans, Zara towered above that standard. Not only was she tall, but her proportions differed enough that the sensor placement required recalibration. She patiently answered Ethan's questions regarding her muscle groups, reflex arcs, and overall Soreni physiology, while he meticulously recoded the neural interface to handle a broader range of motion. Occasionally, he risked a sidelong glance at her. Beneath her calm demeanor, he sensed a simmering tension. She had all the bearing of an aristocrat, but her elongated limbs, her unearthly features, somehow, she seemed aware of how she appeared, yet tried to hide any insecurity. As they worked, an odd sense of camaraderie sprang forth. Two minds entwined in the shared puzzle of bridging worlds. Zara studied the Mark IV's metal shell. "It's intriguing, the thought of wearing this. The people of my world, they've never quite embraced me. I was considered too tall for normal life, too tall for breeding, if you'd pardon such frankness." He paused, the weight of her confession hanging in the air. "I'm sorry, that must have been difficult." She shrugged. "Different cultures prioritize different traits. For us, height beyond a certain threshold suggests imbalance in the genetic tapestry. It is not entirely rational, but traditions rarely are." Ethan chose his words carefully. "On Earth, we have many shapes and sizes. We learn to adapt. In some societies, being tall is admired. In others, it's simply a neutral fact, carrying no stigma at all." She turned her gaze to him, large silver eyes shining with a curiosity touched by sadness. "It's refreshing to hear." They resumed their adjustments, forging a quiet harmony. At last, near dusk, they had configured a basic test model for her proportions. With the other Soreni off at their own engagements, and most of Ethan's colleagues gone for the evening, only they remained in the workshop's hush. Zara approached the newly modified exoskeleton. Her slender fingers traced the lines of shining metal. Ethan assisted her as she stepped into it, the servo motors hissing softly to accommodate her. The harness locked around her hips and waist, the gauntlet-like attachments clamped lightly around her forearms. She drew a measured breath. "Are you certain this will hold my weight and length?" "I've scaled the hydraulics," he reassured, "and the frame is strong enough to lift twice your mass. The calibration might still be rough, so move slowly at first." She took one tentative step. The exoskeleton responded with a subdued hum, balancing her weight elegantly. Her next steps gained confidence. She lifted an arm, the mechanical articulation copying her motion smoothly. A faint smile curled her lips. "It feels less foreign than I expected," she said, glancing at Ethan. "It's like a companion following my every move." He stood before the monitor, collecting data. "Your neural signals are clear. That's good. If we can refine the software further, it'll adjust even faster. No delay. She walked to the other side of the workshop, where a large metal crate stood, and bent down to grip it. The exoskeleton assisted seamlessly, and the crate lifted without the slightest strain on her part. Her eyes shone in wonder. "At home," she said quietly. "I was told my unusual frame was a burden, that no one could handle me, or I them." She paused, carefully setting the crate down. "Yet you humans build contraptions that can handle so much more. Perhaps there is a lesson in that." Ethan recognized the raw truth in her words. "Your height doesn't have to be a burden. Not here, at least. It might even become an advantage. You'll be unstoppable in an exoskeleton made for you." Her laugh was low and soft. "Unstoppable. I like the sound of that." She let her gaze wander around the workshop, as though seeing it anew. "Might I come back tomorrow for more tests?" He gave a playful bow. "Absolutely. I'd like to refine the interface further. Your insights are invaluable. I don't exactly get many 2.5-meter testers volunteering around here." She arched a delicate eyebrow in amusement. "Then we shall continue tomorrow, Ethan Caldwell." As the night grew older and Zara took her leave, Ethan felt a sense of buoyancy within him. She was no ordinary visitor. This was a woman whose presence demanded attention, not just because of her height, but through her quiet determination and refined intelligence. A part of him wondered if she felt similarly, if perhaps she perceived their conversation as more than just professional exchange. He recalled her gentle confession, "I was considered too tall for normal life." The memory tugged at him. Thus began a routine of collaboration that spanned the next several weeks. Zara arrived many afternoons, stepping into the newly adjusted exoskeleton. Ethan collected data, made modifications, and gleaned bits of Soreni culture from their discussions. She spoke of living spires that stretched towards Soria's violet skies, her people's architecture that breathed with them, responding to climate and emotional cues. One day, after a successful test, Ethan found himself asking, "Could we incorporate some of these organic design principles into the exoskeleton? I mean, maybe it doesn't have to remain static metal. There might be a way to infuse it with living elements." Zara's eyes lit with an inner radiance. "I wondered when you would propose that. We use a particular spore-based substrate in some of our structures, which can bond with certain minerals. It's highly experimental to adapt it outside Soria, but perhaps it can be done." Thus began an even deeper alliance, one that drew upon the best of Earth's mechanical expertise and Soria's living architecture. They shaped prototypes that included a biologically reactive layer, a substrate that responded to temperature shifts, the slightest changes in pressure. Ethan's colleagues and the Soreni scientists watched with interest, though some eyed it with skepticism. Olmsted, in particular, scowled at the direction the project was taking, concerned about intellectual property tangles and regulatory nightmares. Late one evening, as Ethan put the finishing touches on the new hybrid exoskeleton, Zara appeared again. This time, she wasn't alone. She brought her mother, Soreni, a Soreni diplomat of high rank who was visiting Earth. Soreni was also tall, though not as tall as Zara, but exuded that same poised elegance. She looked upon the mechanical living apparatus with carefully guarded interest. "So this is the fruit of your collaboration," Soreni said in a smooth, almost musical voice. "Zara has spoken highly of your creative spirit, Engineer Caldwell." Ethan nodded politely. "We're trying to bridge the gap between our worlds. I hope these prototypes will prove beneficial." Zara helped her mother examine the design. Soreni's gaze flitted over each portion, occasionally lingering where the living substrate met the mechanical frame. She asked pointed questions. "How stable is this in Earth's atmosphere? How might it fare in Soria's thinner air? Could it degrade or lose cohesion over time?" Ethan answered as best he could. By the end, Soreni seemed cautiously impressed. When her mother stepped away to converse with a Soreni aide, Zara cast a quick glance at Ethan. "Thank you for taking time with all her questions. My people are thorough." He smiled. "I appreciate the chance to share the vision. You introduced me to the living substrate. Without that, I'd still be tinkering with plain old metal." She regarded him, that faint flicker in her eyes again, a softness that belied her otherwise formal demeanor. Then a subtle shift in the hallway caught their attention. Irving Olmsted was approaching, flanked by two Harlington executives. He wore an unpleasant scowl. "Ambassador Zara," Olmsted announced, clearing his throat with stiff courtesy, "and Soreni." We trust you have found these demonstrations enlightening. The board remains optimistic about forging a partnership. He glanced at Ethan. We do have to consider the scope of technology sharing. We wouldn't want any side to, shall we say, exceed the agreements in place. Zara's expression remained polite, though Ethan sensed a tension in her posture. Soreni spoke. We remain well within the parameters, Mr. Olmsted. Rest assured, we have no intention of violating Earth's property laws or your corporate guidelines. We value mutual respect. Indeed, Olmsted said, adjusting his glasses. We must also think of how these modifications might reflect upon Harlington's brand. We are the top lab on Earth, after all. Our priority is making sure we don't compromise any future patent viability. Something stirred in Ethan, a protective impulse for the work he had forged with Zara. Yet before he could speak, Soreni nodded. Of course, Zara and I will review all relevant details with our delegation. We shall keep you informed. That ended the conversation, but the aftertaste of tension lingered. Olmsted eyed Ethan briefly, as though sending an unspoken warning, then turned and left. Zara and Soreni exchanged glances, and it was Soreni who gently broke the silence. My daughter, we must attend a meeting with our own council, she said softly. But let us reconvene soon, Engineer Caldwell. I, too, am curious about how this union of living substrate and mechanical shell might evolve. It seems to speak to both of our world's strengths. With that, they departed. Ethan stood alone amid the glow of overhead lights, contemplating the swirl of conflicting interests. On one hand, his synergy with Zara was forging technology that neither planet had ever imagined. On the other, corporate meddling and interplanetary diplomacy threatened to stifle what they had only begun to explore. He got little rest that night. Thoughts of Zara, her uncanny height, her elegant curiosity, her confessions of alienation among her own people, all intertwined with his visions of melding Soria's living wonders to Earth's mechanical genius. He sensed they were on the verge of something extraordinary, if only they could break free from the constraints imposed by vested interests. The next day, Zara arrived at the lab earlier than usual. Before Ethan could greet her properly, she motioned for him to join her in a quieter corridor. She wore a simpler garment, allowing ease of movement, yet still accentuating her statuesque figure. We have to discuss something important, she said, glancing around to ensure they were not overheard. My mother will propose a demonstration of our new exoskeleton to the Joint Council. They want proof of concept, something dramatic. But there is hesitation. Some question whether your technology truly resonates with Soria's living architecture, or if it's just a short-lived curiosity. Ethan's heart picked up a beat. A public demonstration, you mean? And they want to see the living mechanical synergy in action. Yes, she affirmed, in front of a combined audience of human and Soreni leaders. A chance to prove this device can work in real-world conditions. He exhaled slowly. That's good news, right? A chance to show them everything we've achieved. Zara nodded, but her delicate brow furrowed. Yet there's more. Our own Soreni Council has also learned of my personal involvement in shaping this exoskeleton. They know I've been devoting countless hours to it. To them, I remain an oddity, a diplomat with an unorthodox body. Some have always believed I lack a stable place within Soreni society. If this demonstration fails, or offends our traditions, I risk further alienation. It could also jeopardize our entire diplomatic effort. Ethan gently reached for her hand, though she was a full head taller than he. She allowed the contact. We'll make it work, Ambassador. I promise. Our combined technology, it's a testament to both our worlds. No matter what doubts they have, once they see it in action, they'll realize we've created something more than a short-lived curiosity. She lowered her gaze, the moment stretching in a hush. I want to believe that, Ethan Caldwell. I do. But we must be flawless. They parted ways to begin intense preparations. Over the following days, they refined every angle of the exoskeleton's fit, tested its substrate's responsiveness, and even integrated a small portion of Soreni luminescent spores that created a subtle glow at the mechanical joints whenever tension or torque levels shifted. Meanwhile, pressure from both sides mounted. Corporate sponsors demanded updates, while the Soreni Council reminded Zara of her obligations. Late one evening, they were alone again in the workshop, the hush broken only by the quiet hum of overhead fans. They had just finished a test run, during which Zara lifted, carried, and balanced weights that would challenge any normal being. The exoskeleton responded to her like a second skin, each motion fluid and whisper quiet. Even her elongated form, so often singled out on Soria, seemed to fit perfectly in the device's lines. She stepped out of the harness, a faint sheen of sweat marking her forehead. Incredible. I've never felt so at ease in my own body. The way it complements my height, my stride. It's as if it was waiting for someone shaped like me. Ethan powered down the control panel. You're the ideal test pilot now. Your muscle memory has aligned with the neural interface. Tomorrow's demonstration should be a triumph. Zara nodded, though she didn't seem entirely relaxed. Yes. Still, I wonder if we are forging something bigger than any demonstration. I sense a deeper synergy, a lesson our people might learn from each other. Our buildings breathe, your machines adapt. Perhaps we're not as dissimilar as we thought. A gentle silence stretched between them. She took a step closer, shadows from the overhead lights crossing her face, highlighting the fine planes of her cheekbones, the subtle shimmer in her eyes. Ethan felt the magnetism of that moment, a sense of closeness that transcended species or cultural background. He remembered her earlier admission that on her planet, she was dismissed as too tall to breed, a curiosity on the fringes. He found the notion preposterous, for here, she stood like a queen. Something within him stirred, a desire to assure her of her worth, to show her that not all people placed such trivial constraints on acceptance or affection. But words did not come immediately. Instead, he gently laid a hand upon her arm, the difference in their heights almost a poetic mismatch. Zara turned her gaze upon him, and there was no need for words. A quiet understanding passed between them, shaped by the synergy they had formed. Two minds bridging star systems, forging technology that mirrored their own tentative steps toward closeness. The next day dawned to a flurry of activity. Dignitaries, scientists, corporate backers, and an array of curious onlookers assembled in a large demonstration hall that Harlington had arranged. The space was vast, with seating arranged in a semicircle around a central stage. At the center stood a carefully prepared environment simulating obstacles, heavy crates, climbing frames, and a suspended platform. The press, both human and Soreni correspondents, lined the edges, cameras trained on the stage. Zara stood off to one side, flanked by her mother Sorenia and a small cluster of Soreni officials who whispered among themselves in their melodic language. On the other side, Ethan conferred with Megan Langley, double-checking the exoskeleton's final calibrations. The living substrate glowed faintly along the metal frame, giving the device an otherworldly elegance. A hush fell as a representative from Earth welcomed the spectators. Then Sorenia gave a brief introduction in the Soreni tongue, gracefully segueing into English so that all could understand her formal remarks. Today, we bear witness to a collaboration between two worlds. Engineer Ethan Caldwell of Earth has worked closely with our own ambassador Zara to create an exoskeleton that merges human mechanics with Soreni living architecture. We invite you to observe, with open minds and hearts, the possibility that our differences might enrich us all. A polite ripple of applause followed. Zara stepped forward, and the entire room seemed to tense at her regal bearing and undeniable presence. She wore a streamlined garment that allowed easy movement, her elongated limbs radiating strength. Ethan joined her, guiding the exoskeleton forward on an anti-grav dolly. One of the Harlington staff wheeled away the dolly, leaving the exoskeleton upright at the center of the stage. "Ambassador," Ethan said softly, "ready?" She nodded, determination etched on her face. He helped her don the harness, ensuring every segment locked in place. The living substrate glimmered along the ridges, responding to the warmth of her body and the electrical signals from the neural sensors. At first, she stood motionless, letting the suit calibrate. Murmurs rose in the crowd. Then, with a deliberate move, she stepped forward. Her stride was powerful, yet smooth. The exoskeleton bore her weight easily, amplifying her motions with grace. Zara approached a metal crate weighing several hundred kilograms. She stooped, gripping its sides, and lifted. The crate rose without a tremor, as if weightless in her grasp. The crowd gasped. Even the Soreni officials, who had seen living architecture at work, looked intrigued by this mechanical living hybrid. Cameras zoomed in. Zara carried the crate across the stage, setting it down softly. Applause rippled, but she wasn't done. She approached a climbing frame that rose nearly 4 meters high. Ordinarily, such a structure might require careful scaling even from an athletic human, but she ascended it as if stepping up a staircase, the exoskeleton's servo motors quietly assisting. At the top, she balanced on a narrow beam, an imposing figure against the overhead lights. Then, with a controlled leap, she landed on the floor, the exoskeleton absorbing the shock with a faint hiss. The applause swelled to a thunderous level, filling the hall. Journalists snapped pictures, and Soreni scientists scribbled notes on their slender tablets. Ethan could barely contain a grin. He had never seen the exoskeleton function so flawlessly. He met Zara's eyes from across the stage and offered a triumphant nod. She removed the harness, stepping free with a grace that belied her tall frame. "My friends," she said, addressing the assembly, "this device does more than lift crates or scale frames. It symbolizes our potential for a future where Soreni living architecture and Earth's mechanical brilliance unite. We stand on the cusp of discoveries neither world can achieve alone." Another wave of applause. Soreni joined her daughter, addressing the crowd in a calm, resonant tone. "We are pleased by this demonstration. Our officials have seen that there is great merit in continuing this collaboration. Perhaps we shall invite more Earth engineers to Soria, so that they might witness our living structures firsthand." Ethan's heart soared. The demonstration had gone better than he had dreamed. He could already envision traveling to Soria, studying its organic towers, and refining more advanced exoskeletal systems. He might, though it was a bold thought, stand alongside Zara on her home turf, forging deeper ties between their species. As the audience began dispersing, abuzz with excitement, he spotted Irving Olmsted in the corner, frowning but forced to concede the triumph. Over the next several hours, the demonstration's success led to spontaneous gatherings and discussions in Harlington's corridors. Soreni officials engaged in lively debates with Earth engineers, comparing notes and possibilities. Earth's government representatives, typically cautious, hinted at their willingness to open official channels for further research. Meanwhile, Ethan searched for Zara. He found her in a secluded portion of the demonstration hall, near a tall window overlooking the city's skyline. The late afternoon sunlight slanted through, catching dust motes in a golden haze. She turned as he approached, a subdued smile tracing her lips. "Ethan, we did it." He exhaled in relief. "We did. And your speech, you were amazing." I could see their eyes light up. "You single-handedly convinced them to take the next steps." A flicker of warmth crossed her expression. She stepped closer, her tall figure slightly bending to better meet his gaze. "Your exoskeleton design made it possible. Do not forget how integral your vision was." For a moment, they simply stood there, gazing through the window. The city below bustled with life. Hover cars, maglev trains, and the hum of commerce. In the distance, the sun cast the last of its rays, painting the horizon with oranges and pinks. Zara's voice fell to nearly a whisper. "I have to leave soon. The council has requested my presence aboard our vessel to finalize next steps. But if all goes well, you'll be invited to Soria. They want to see whether our living architecture can integrate with the rest of your exoskeleton concepts." Ethan felt a pang of longing. "Then we'll be working together on your planet." "That's exciting, if a bit daunting." She nodded. "Yes, you'll find Soria's gravity slightly lighter, our atmosphere tinted by the local flora. The living spires might unsettle you at first, but I believe you'll adapt quickly." His eyes wandered over her features, the delicate slope of her jaw, the subtle glimmer of her eyes in the waning light. Summoning courage, he spoke gently. "Zara, there's something that's been on my mind. There's more here than just science, or a union of technologies. I feel it whenever we talk, or work side by side. A sense of closeness." She tilted her head, a slight flush of color tinting her pale cheeks. "I felt it too, Ethan. Even from those first moments in the lab. You see me not merely as an ambassador, nor a too-tall anomaly, but as, what do you humans say? A person with a soul." He inhaled, stepping closer so that they were nearly touching. "That's exactly it. I look at you, and I see someone exceptional. Yes, physically, but also in spirit. I want to get to know that person more, beyond the mission, beyond any demonstration or official protocols. I want to see who Zara truly is. Her expression softened, a flicker of vulnerability passing through her. Then, with a gentleness that transcended cultural barriers, she reached out and clasped his hand. "This is uncharted territory for me," she whispered. "On Soria, I was told no one would want someone of my height. Here on Earth, we are different species entirely. Yet, somehow, it feels natural being near you. It warms me in a way no one else ever has." The hush of the corridor enveloped them. Then, tentatively, Zara leaned down, and Ethan raised his face. Their lips met in a soft, lingering kiss. For a breathless moment, time seemed to dissolve, leaving only the two of them. In that instant, they bridged not just star systems, but hearts, her unusual height melding perfectly into his willingness to reach up. Or perhaps it was he who was rising to meet her, though still nearly a foot shorter. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan felt a mingling of euphoria and wonder. Any watchers or corporate protocols be damned. He didn't care if Olmsted or half the board witnessed their moment. This was real and transcendent. Zara's voice was hushed. "I want to see where this leads, Ethan. If you come to Soria, I will show you places of unimaginable beauty. I will teach you of living crystals that hum with the planet's heartbeat. And perhaps we can build something new, together." He squeezed her hand gently, half afraid she might vanish. "Yes," he whispered. "I'll go to Soria. We'll do this, side by side." They parted shortly thereafter, each needed by their respective colleagues. But a promise lingered between them, sealed in that corridor. The seeds of partnership, both technical and deeply personal, had taken root. In the weeks that followed, formal invitations were issued. Paperwork was processed with dizzying speed for an interplanetary journey. Ethan found himself inundated with messages from the Soreni Council, each one detailing regulations for bringing mechanical prototypes to their world. Harlington's directors, seeing the potential for massive scientific breakthroughs and lucrative patents, agreed to sponsor his expedition, albeit with an extensive contract to protect their interests. At last, the day came when Ethan, accompanied by a small team from Harlington, boarded the Soreni vessel anchored in Earth's orbit. Polished corridors curved in graceful arcs, the design reminiscent of seashells. The air was faintly perfumed with alien blossoms grown aboard the ship. He felt both a jolt of excitement and a tremor of nervousness. Soria beckoned. Zara greeted him with that poised dignity, overshadowing him physically but never letting him feel overshadowed in spirit. Her face lit with a genuine smile. "Welcome, Ethan Caldwell. My home awaits." As the ship leapt into faster-than-light travel, Earth's star receded, replaced by the swirling tapestry of cosmic lights. In the quiet corners of the vessel, Ethan and Zara shared whispered conversations, shaped by hopes for their next steps. At times, she described the shimmering dunes of Soria, her eyes alight with nostalgia. At others, he recounted Earth's history of invention, how humanity had struggled through millennia to master steel, fire, and electricity. Each story bridged their differences, forging a deeper bond. Finally, the vessel breached the orbit of Soria. Ethan stood at a viewport, breath seized by the sight below. The planet was bathed in pale lavender clouds, parted to reveal patches of teal oceans and amber land masses. As they descended through the atmosphere, he glimpsed towering spires that seemed to glow from within, organically shaped structures that merged with the terrain. Stepping onto Soreni soil was an experience unlike any other. The gravity was indeed lighter than Earth's, giving him a buoyant sensation. The air tasted of unfamiliar minerals, an undercurrent of floral notes reminiscent of an undiscovered rainforest. All around him, living spires rose majestically. Vines and strands of glowing algae wove among them, forming patterns that shifted in response to movement. Zara stood at his side, watching his reaction with quiet satisfaction. "Come," she said, gesturing toward a wide thoroughfare. "There is much to show you." They made their way to a vast structure reminiscent of an open-air cathedral. Only each pillar and arch was grown from living stone. Soreni citizens moved gracefully along pathways, their attire shimmering with shifting color. Many were tall, though few reached Zara's lofty height. Some stared curiously at Ethan. He was a visitor, a human, an engineer from another planet. He tried to remain unself-conscious. Zara's calm, regal presence reassured him. Days turned to weeks as he settled in, invited to stay in a specialized guest wing designed for human visitors. The Harlington team worked with Soreni architects, while Ethan delved deeper into the heart of living architecture. He observed how entire buildings breathed, their structures subtly expanding or contracting with changes in temperature or occupant stress levels. The living substrate Zara had introduced on Earth was only a fraction of the wonders Soria possessed. In return, Ethan demonstrated the Mark V exoskeleton, an advanced iteration built in partial collaboration with Soreni engineers. This time, living crystals were embedded along the neural feedback loops, allowing for an even closer bond between suit and user. Soria's inhabitants were astounded. Some approached Ethan, timidly at first, praising his resourcefulness. Others expressed eagerness to see if such technology could help Soreni, who faced mobility challenges, or who, like Zara, stood out from conventional shapes. Still, challenges remained. Certain conservative factions among the Soreni believed that merging mechanical elements with living architecture was a step too far, an affront to their ancient traditions. Rumors circulated that if the exoskeleton were permitted to grow in usage, it might corrupt Soria's natural balance. Ethan tried to keep a low profile, focusing on scientific collaboration, while Zara navigated the complexities of her culture's political tapestry. In quieter moments, away from official duties, they explored Soria's landscapes together. He soared across shallow ravines in a personal flight harness, courtesy of the planet's lighter gravity, while Zara bounded alongside him, nimbly scaling rock formations that glimmered with internal phosphorescence. At night, they ventured to the outskirts where living forests glowed in patterns reminiscent of the star-studded sky overhead. There, amidst the hush of alien flora, they allowed themselves to speak candidly of their fears and hopes. On one such evening, they sat upon a gently pulsing rock plateau, a phenomenon caused by underground fungal networks that regulated the rock's temperature. The triple moons of Soria hung overhead. Zara had never looked so radiant, her elongated frame silhouetted against the sky, silver eyes reflecting moonlight. Ethan placed a hand on hers. This world is more than I ever dreamed. And you fit here like a goddess. I wonder sometimes how you felt so alienated. It's breathtaking. She smiled sadly. I was never scorned overtly, not often, but the whispers were always there. Too tall, too unbalanced. Even now, though many greet me respectfully as an ambassador, some still avert their eyes, as if I remind them of something that doesn't conform. But now, she squeezed his hand. Having you here, seeing how you accept me, it's the first time I've truly felt at home in my body. His heart stirred. Zara, you need never doubt your place. You're extraordinary, no matter what these old traditions say. They leaned closer, and in the moonlit hush, they shared another tender kiss. The living plateau emitted a faint throbbing glow, as though resonating with the affection blossoming between them. In that moment, the complexities of interplanetary diplomacy, corporate meddling, and conservative factions faded away, leaving only the raw truth of two souls drawn together across unimaginable distances. Eventually, though, reality pressed in. The next day, a Soreni Elder Council session beckoned. High Eldress Morales had summoned Ethan to give a formal account of the exoskeleton's potential impact on living architecture. Zara guided him into a soaring chamber, ringed by seats carved from gently luminescent stone. There, the council of robed elders regarded him in silent appraisal. Ethan made his case. This exoskeleton is not meant to replace your living structures, he explained, projecting holographic diagrams. It can complement them, offering assistance where traditional architecture might fall short. For instance, in rescue operations after natural disasters, or to help Soreni who have physical limitations. He paused, glancing at Zara, then added, or, for those among you who stand outside the typical Soreni proportions, it can offer more comfort, more acceptance, bridging gaps in daily life. Morales' expression was inscrutable. She turned to the other elders, conferring in hushed tones. After a time, she spoke. We see the value in collaboration, yet many here fear the path to mechanization might lead us away from the living core that defines Soria. There have been rumors, Engineer Caldwell, that your suits could drastically alter Soreni genetics over time. He shook his head firmly. There is no forced genetic alteration. The living substrate is reactive, yes, but it does not rewrite a user's DNA. It harmonizes, it does not supplant. I assure you, the purpose is synergy, not dominance. Zara stepped forward, addressing the elders in her authoritative, resonant voice. I have tested these suits myself. I stand by them, and by Ethan's intentions. If we can grow spires that adapt to our environment, should we not also consider mechanical companions that do the same? A synergy of life and technology, forging a stronger tomorrow. Silence reigned. Then, slowly, murmurs broke among the council. Some nodded thoughtfully. Others displayed reluctance. At length, Morales raised her hand, calling for calm. We must think carefully, yet we will not dismiss your achievements. Our traditions counsel caution, but we also recall that stagnation can be just as dangerous. We will deliberate further and invite an open demonstration for the populace. With that, the council rose, session concluded. Although no immediate resolution was reached, Ethan sensed a shift. They were not outright rejecting the exoskeleton. They were weighing its significance, a step forward, albeit a cautious one. In the days that followed, excitement spread through Soreni cities. News of the mechanical living harness that allowed even the tall, the weak, the differently abled, to navigate more freely. Some curious Soreni ventured to the demonstration halls, stepping gingerly into the suits with awe. A wave of fresh proposals emerged, from using exoskeletons in Soria's airborne sports, to incorporating them for labor in the more treacherous mountainous regions. The synergy Ethan had dreamed of was unfolding. Not everyone was pleased. Rumblings arose in certain enclaves that tradition was being sacrificed, that outsiders were imposing alien ways upon Soria's timeless culture. A small protest formed outside the demonstration hall, carrying banners in flowing Soreni script, denouncing mechanical infiltration. Zara weathered these developments with composure, though Ethan saw the toll it took on her. As an ambassador, she was responsible for forging alliances, yet personally, she had found love and acceptance in the very technology some of her people scorned. She soldiered on, determined. Then, in a surprising turn, High Eldress Morales announced a grand public festival, a chance for the entire city to witness the synergy of living spires and exoskeletal technology. If it succeeded, the council would formally sanction further research. If it failed, if the people rejected it, Ethan's collaboration might be severely curtailed and his invitation to remain on Soria revoked. The night before the festival, Ethan found Zara perched on a high balcony that overlooked the luminous city. Lights pulsed in gentle waves, as though the city were breathing. She wore a robe of living fibers that shimmered with her movements, highlighting her lofty frame. She gazed out in silent contemplation. He joined her, placing a hand on the smooth railing. "You're nervous," he observed softly. She let out a tremulous breath. "Yes, so much depends on tomorrow. Our work, our relationship, the possibility of bridging two worlds. Perhaps the fate of those in my situation, those who don't fit the standard Soreni mold, hangs in the balance as well." Ethan slipped an arm around her waist, feeling her lean into him. "We'll show them it can succeed. That these suits aren't an affront to tradition, but a chance to expand it." Her eyes closed for a moment, tension easing. "Ethan, you give me hope." "Thank you." They held each other in the starlit silence. Then, in a voice tinged with emotion, she said, "No matter what happens, I'm grateful our paths crossed. You made me see that I am not broken, just different. And different can be beautiful." His response was to draw her into a gentle kiss, the star-flecked sky embracing them in its vast serenity. The day of the festival dawned under the brilliance of two suns, the third trailing behind in a shimmering arc. The city's central plaza was adorned with floating ribbons of luminescent algae, twisting gently in the breeze. Crowds gathered, Soreni in their shimmering robes, curious humans from the Harlington team, and smaller clusters of onlookers from neighboring star systems who happened to be traveling through. The air buzzed with anticipation. A large dais stood in the center, ringed by living pillars that pulsed with a subtle glow. On it were arranged multiple exoskeletons, each incorporating the living substrate. Some had special features tailored for unique Soreni needs, elongated frames for the extremely tall, reinforced structures for those performing heavy labor, lighter versions for recreational sports. At precisely midday, a chime resounded. High Eldress Morales stood, flanked by council members, to address the throng. Greetings, citizens of Soria and honored guests. We gather to witness the fruits of collaboration, a melding of mechanical ingenuity and our cherished living architectures. Let the demonstration begin. One by one, Soreni volunteers stepped forward, guided by Harlington engineers. A hush came over the plaza as they strapped into suits, each sized and fitted to the individual. Then, as if on cue, the participants moved in synchronized patterns, a kind of dance, half choreographed, half spontaneous. The exoskeletons hummed and glowed, the living substrate shifting to the rhythm of their steps. The crowd broke into scattered applause, which built steadily as the demonstration continued. Then came the highlight, Zara, wearing a special variant of the exoskeleton. She walked into the center of the plaza, each step confident. She turned to address the assembled masses in her clear voice, the words amplified by subtle technology woven into the dais. My people, I stand before you as one who has long been deemed an outlier, too tall to fully belong. But in these suits, I have found not just a tool, but a sense of self I never thought possible. Our living spires define us, shape our culture. Now, they meet Earth's mechanical brilliance. Is this union truly against our nature, or might it be our next evolution, guided by harmony rather than fear? A ripple of murmurs, both supportive and uncertain. She extended her arms in a graceful arc, activating the exoskeleton's more advanced features. The living substrate glowed around her, responding to her emotional and physical impulses. Slowly, a cresting wave of luminescence passed from her suit into the dais, which was also embedded with the living crystals. The dais responded with a gentle ripple, as if it, too, were alive and listening. Gasps of awe spread through the plaza. The synergy was tangible, the suit, Zara's body, the dais, all pulsating in unison. In that moment, the border between living architecture and mechanical augmentation seemed to dissolve. The crowd began to cheer, building into a roar. Ethan, watching from the periphery, felt tears prick at his eyes. Zara stood radiant, no longer too tall, but precisely tall enough, commanding respect, admiration, love from the people who once dismissed her. He swelled with pride, certain that after this day, no one could call her unfit, no one could deny the potential for exoskeletons in Soria's future. The demonstration concluded with spontaneous applause that echoed across the plaza. Morales and several council members stepped forward, unable to hide their amazement. Ambassador Zara, Morales announced, Engineer Caldwell, and all who have taken part in this endeavor. We have seen enough. Soria shall embrace a trial phase for these exoskeletons, studying them further. May our future be shaped by unity and discovery, rather than division. Thunderous applause. Cheers. Flowers and luminescent ribbons were thrown onto the dais in celebration. A swirl of color and sound enveloped them. Zara deactivated the exoskeleton's heightened display, stepping free to thunderous praise, her face alight with more than just reflected glow. In the hours that followed, the city erupted into festivity. Musicians played harmonic instruments, street vendors sold delicacies that glistened with alien spices. Ethan and Zara found themselves besieged by well-wishers and curiosity seekers. A wave of acceptance had swept the planet, or at least this corner of it, ensuring their joint technology had a chance to flourish. That evening, when the city's glow softened into the hush of night, Zara and Ethan retreated to a quiet balcony in the living spire that served as the festival's hub. Below them, the city's lights shimmered like 1,000 tiny stars. Above, the triple moons cast overlapping halos. He reached for her hand. We did it, he breathed, still half in awe. She laughed softly, musical as wind through chimes. We did. And we've changed more than just technology. We may have changed hearts. He looked up at her towering form, a grin breaking across his features. Zara, you're so many wonderful things, but never again let anyone say you're too tall. Not when you've shown how high we, as different species, can reach together. A luminous tear glinted at the corner of her eye as she leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. My height was once called a flaw on Soria. Now, it is a symbol of what can be achieved. And you, my daring human, you have given me the courage to embrace all that I am. They kissed under the gentle glow of the night, and in that union, it felt as if each living spire in the distance pulsed in response, celebrating their bond. Tomorrow would bring more work, more negotiations, more prototypes, and engineering breakthroughs. But for now, they held each other, content that the seeds of acceptance had sprouted into a resplendent reality. In the weeks and months that followed, the exoskeletons were successfully integrated into Soreni society, albeit gradually and with continued oversight by the Council. Resistance from conservative factions lessened as they witnessed the tangible benefits. Farmers able to harvest more efficiently, artists performing new forms of airborne dance, once ostracized individuals standing proud in suits tailored to their shape. Meanwhile, a new wave of exchange students, researchers, and explorers began traveling between Earth and Soria. The two worlds, once galaxies apart, now felt intimately linked by the innovations born of Ethan and Zara's partnership. As for Ethan and Zara, their love only deepened. They spent part of their time on Earth, where Zara marveled at ocean sunsets, terrestrial architecture, and the carefree variety of human heights. Yet her innate grace always drew admiration rather than scorn. They spent the rest of their time on Soria, further refining mechanical living hybrids, forging a future where the boundary between technology and biology grew beautifully blurred. And so it was that the ambassador who had once been scorned as too tall found a home, not only in a suit of steel and living crystals, but in the heart of a human who saw her towering figure as part of her grandeur. Their story became a gentle legend on both worlds, told in hushed or triumphant tones, reminding young dreamers everywhere that differences can unite rather than divide, that acceptance can blossom from adversity, and that sometimes, reaching for new heights means finding the courage to stand tall in who you are.